Hi, welcome to this video. We've been doing some algebra word problems about motion. And we got over the basics in the previous video. Now it's time for a problem set and have you try. These word problems will all be using the formula for distance. Distance equals rate times time. It's a very simple formula. And what I want you to do is think about using this visual here, this structure that will remind you of what to do. So in a word problem, if the distance is unknown, if you're asked for the distance, you are going to multiply the rate times the time. If you are asked for the rate, the speed at which something happens, you take a look at what's left, and that'll be the distance divided by the time. All right? Distance divided by time. If you are asked how long it takes something or someone to travel, that's time. Time is the unknown, and what's left is the distance divided by the speed or the rate, d over r. All right, so use this visual aid here, and that will be the quickest way to figure out whether it's a multiplication problem or a division problem. Another tip is to draw a proper diagram and see what parts are equal. So let's try this problem together. All right, number one, Joe left the Science Museum and drove north at an average speed of 65 miles per hour. Wilbur left sometime later driving in the opposite direction with an average speed of 75 miles per hour. After Joe had driven for 5 hours, they were 550 miles apart. Find the number of hours Wilbur drove. All right, one of the most important keys for these kinds of word problems is to draw the proper diagram. So I'm going to draw an arrow going north and represent that for Joe. So Joe left the Science Museum and drove north at an average speed of 65 miles per hour. Okay, I'll label that in just a second. Wilbur left sometime later driving in the opposite direction, average speed of 75 miles per hour. So this is Wilbur, and he drove a little faster. Maybe he went farther, but we don't know how long yet. So that's going to be Wilbur. Now let's label our arrows. All right, this is going to represent Joe, and this is going to represent Wilbur. And what do we know? Well, when Joe was traveling from the home base here, we know that he was going 65 miles per hour. How long did he travel? After Joe had driven for 5 hours. So 65 times 5 equals his distance. Okay, we don't know how far that is, but it actually won't matter. Now Wilbur, his speed was 75 miles per hour, and we do not know how long it took him, so we're going to call that t. So Joe's distance traveled is 65 times 5. Okay? Rate times time. Wilbur's distance traveled is 75 times t. Now we do know that together their distance was 550 miles. Okay, that's how far apart they are. So they're going in opposite directions, but at the end of a certain amount of time, we are going to know they're 550 miles apart. So let's take the distance that Joe traveled, 65 times 5, and add that to the distance Wilbur traveled, 75 times t, and that'll give us the total distance, which they are 550 miles apart. Here we go, we're going to solve for t. 65 times 5 is 325 plus 75t equals 550. Subtract 325 from each side, and now it's 75t equals 550. Excuse me, 225. There we go. Last step will be to divide each side by 75, and that will give us 3 hours. All right, so there we go. Draw a good diagram and try to relate to what's equal. In this case, we had distance that Joe traveled plus distance Wilbur traveled. Even though in opposite directions, that would be 550 miles. Put it in an equation and solve. All right, we're just getting started now with these word problems. I'm going to have you try the next problem and in the next video, so give that a shot. Remember to draw a diagram. And thanks for watching.